Hello everyone, this is Jaspreet Singh Nara from Network Security Diploma Fall Batch 2019 from University of Winnipeg. I'm creating this video to showcase my final project under the supervision of Charles Bezilowicz for our organization naming Jazz InfoSec Corporation. Our organization deals with security audit and vulnerability assessment of various companies and organizations and securing them from any cyber threats which would affect their infrastructure assets. Our organization also helps small and medium-sized companies who don't have budget to afford cybersecurity department in their company. Hence, we help them to keep them secured from any cyber threats on their network. Jazz InfoSec Corporation have key members such as Chief Human Resource Officer, Chief Information Officer, and Chief Technology Officer. We have key departments such as Human Resource, Information Security, and Technology and Infrastructure Support. We have key customers such as 365 Technologies, Skip the Dishes, and Manitoba Hydro. This is our internal layout in which each department is designated and segregated with different VLANs assigned to them, such as our marketing cluster, which is in VLAN 10, HR cluster is in VLAN 20, tech support cluster is in VLAN 30, and management cluster is in VLAN 40. I have HQ where our key members are located and kept them in different buildings, although they share same VLANs according to their departments in order to keep them secured. This is our internal server which contains two switches which are connected to each departments, three routers in which one router is an edge router and other two routers are internal routers, and an external server. In order to create redundancy, we created one edge router and two additional routers to help in load balancing and fault tolerance. Also, we hosted most of our services in external server for our clients who can access our services, and we kept that server in DMZ zone in order to monitor traffic and prevent any malicious actions on the server. This is our threat model, which provides and identifies potential security threats and vulnerability, and it also quantifies the seriousness of each of the vulnerabilities and prioritize the techniques to mitigate attack and protect IT resources. We use various applications such as mentioned here: Tenable Nessus, Kali Linux, Nmap, and Wireshark. For Tenable Nessus, this is the application which is used to scan for possible vulnerabilities within the network assets. Kali Linux is a Debian-based Linux distribution designed for digital forensics and penetration testing. This OS contains various tools such as Nmap, Burpsuite, Wireshark, etc. We use Nmap, which is an active reconnaissance tool and is used to determine what ports are being used by the services, and with proper flags we can determine the versions, types of services, etc. on that particular port. We use Wireshark, which is a tool used to capture the network traffic and analyze those packets in real time. This is our asset inventory, which gives us a brief information about the assets that are available in the organization and which needs to be secured in order to keep our organization safe from any cyber threats. This is our major asset list, which needs to be evaluated and kept in very secure place. Also, it represents how vulnerable the documents are while they are at rest are in transit or in use. Out of all the available assets, we did the risk assessment on the assets which needs to be secured in order to help the organization from losing any confidential information about the company, employees, internal assets, or our customers. The assets that we chosen are mentioned in this slide, which are network architecture documents, IT support, Cisco Catalyst 9200 series switch, Cisco router RV160 VPN router, Apple MacBook Pro, ServiceNow, Jira, and Microsoft 365. Out of all the assets that is mentioned here, in this we have to determine for which risk should be mitigated, for which asset risk should be transferred, and for which asset risk should be accepted. Firstly, we'll be talking about mitigating risk for network architecture documents. For this, threat is information can be leaked or disclosed to the individual who is not authorized for it. And for this, threat likelihood is likely and threat exposure is high. For this, vulnerability is access to this document is not classified and users who should not have access to it can get access. Vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $72,000. After doing risk assessment, mitigating factors for this is mitigate the risk by keeping it in secured server with proper access control policies. Any update on the document will be logged and monitored, and only authorized persons can access this document. And for this, countermeasure cost is $10,300. Here the asset is IT support for which risk should be mitigated. And here the threat is while assisting to the customers, they can provide personal information like bank or personal details. Here the threat likelihood is almost certain and threat exposure is very high. Here the vulnerability is IT support employee might get inadequate training or their knowledge base might not be updated according to contractual policies and procedures. Here vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is low, and annual loss expectancy is $18,675. Here the risk assessment mitigating factors are IT support team will be given proper training and document about the updated policies and procedures. IT support team will be given limited access according to requirement, and access will be given and revoked for the application or documents which are required for short-term application. And here the countermeasure cost is $3,200. Another asset for which risk should be mitigated is Cisco Catalyst 9200 series switches. Here the threat is hackers can get physical access or remote access to the switches, which might compromise the information that is being shared within the organization. Here the threat likelihood is likely and threat exposure is high. Here the vulnerability is switches firmware might not be updated with latest security patches and port security might not be configured on remaining ports. Here the vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $811.20. Here the risk assessment mitigating factors are default passwords will be removed and strong login password will be used. All the configuration will be logged and monitored by the network administrator, and switches will be kept in secured places which would be hard for internal threat to get physical access to it. And countermeasure cost for this is $430. Another asset for which risk should be mitigated is Cisco router RV160 VPN router. Here the threat is router might be compromised by any internal threat or an hacker and can access internal information like routing table or can sniff the packets. Here the threat likelihood is likely and threat exposure is high. Here the vulnerability is due to inadequate access control policies, routers routing table can be manipulated and firmware might not be updated with latest security patches. Here the vulnerability severity is medium and existing safeguard rating is medium. Here the annual loss expectancy is $138.57. Here under risk assessment, mitigating factors are limited access will be given to new employees and any new configurations will be logged and reviewed before implementing on the router. And unauthorized access will be reviewed and actions will be taken accordingly, and routers will be kept in secure environment out of reach of any unauthorized personnel. Here the countermeasure cost is $320. For another asset for which risk should be mitigated is Apple MacBook Pro. Here threat is laptops might be stolen, due to which information present on the laptop might be disclosed to any unauthorized personnel. Here the threat likelihood is almost certain and threat exposure is very high. Here the vulnerability is a laptop might have inadequate physical protection to keep them protected from external threats. Here the vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $14,000. Here the risk assessment mitigating factors are strong password will be implemented to prevent any unauthorized access to this laptop. Restrictions will be applied to prevent any unauthorized software installation on a laptop, and employees will be given physical security for their laptops. Countermeasure cost for this is $1,800. For another set for which risk should be transferred is ServiceNow. Here the threat is there might be contractual information breach which would violate the agreement policies between vendors and the company. Here the threat likelihood is likely and threat exposure is high. Here the vulnerability is the contractual information breach can be due to the lack of internal documentation and policies. Here the vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $28,000. Under the risk assessment, mitigating factors are existing knowledge bases will be updated with any updates in policies and procedures. Activities will be logged and reviewed on daily basis, and training will be conducted quarterly or annually to address the changes in procedures and policies. And for this, countermeasure cost is $2,900. Here, another set for which risk should be transferred is Jira. Here, the threat is disclosure of confidential documents to the unauthorized person. Here, the threat likelihood is likely and threat exposure is high. Here, the vulnerability is integrity of the software can be compromised if the software is not updated, and unreported vulnerability may lead to cyber threat to internal database server. Here, the vulnerability severity is high, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $26,000. Here, risk assessment mitigating factors are software will be updated with latest security patches, software will be restricted to limited access to our internal servers database, and access control will be applied on the software to prevent it from to be used by any unregistered system. Here the countermeasure cost is $6,500. The last asset for which risk should be accepted is Microsoft 365. Here the threat is employees can install unauthorized software or files on the server or system. Here the threat likelihood is almost certain and threat exposure is high. Here the vulnerability is some users can be given read and write permissions to the documents or software to which they are not authorized for. Here the vulnerability severity is medium, existing safeguard rating is medium, and annual loss expectancy is $8,000. Here the risk assessment mitigating factors are strong password will be recommended to all the users, unauthorized software installation on a system or server will be logged and preventive measures will be taken, and any internal corporate file will not be transferred to outside world. Here the countermeasure cost is $5,200. Thank you for your time. Have a good